the one thing I want to say too is feel free to interrupt, like as we're talking about all this stuff, fielding these questions and chiming in with something you're curious about or don't know is the key to this. This is a blanket presentation, and the goal is to find certain things that maybe you don't know about or you don't want to learn more about, so we'll really focus on those. All right? If you don't know, there's two different types of basically computer operating systems. There's Mac and there's PC. So I'll try to cover both, but for demonstration purposes, we have a Mac, so the things you're going to see are going to be on a Mac. I can usually answer the question about it if you have a PC, and even afterwards, if you like brought your laptop, we can look for those things on your PC. Some of the things I'm talking about are very similar, but I'll dive into that a little more. So when I refer to a computer, it's going to be anything from a laptop to a desktop to your cell phone to a tablet. All of these things have computers in them now, and it's pretty much gotten so extensive as like your TV, speakers, all these things have computers in them. It's kind of crazy. But for the most basic aspect of these things, we're talking about tablets, we're talking about computers, laptops, PCs. Hello. I'll say tablet, that just basically means the PC version of your iPad. So Mac has a specific name for all their stuff. The MacBook Pro, that's a laptop. Their iPad, their iPhone. So I'll try to differentiate between those at all times, but you can have a tablet by Samsung, you could have a tablet by Google. There's lots of variety there. And we'll talk about hardware, which hardware is going to be any physical component of your computer. And I like to also include accessories. Hardware can be your printer, it can be your mouse, things that connect in. And then this second category of that is software, which those are non-physical applications that run in the computer program. So anytime we talk about your memory of your computer, your hard drive, that's hardware. And if we talk about Zoom or we talk about your email, that's a software-based program. We talk about Norton Antivirus, that's software. So really the key in that is just sometimes troubleshooting. Your computer might be giving you some issues because it's a hardware issue, like your memory's bad or full, or you're having a software issue where let's say your Zoom's not up to date. So there's kind of two aspects there. Sometimes you have software issues because your computer is so old, you have hardware issues. So my goal through this presentation is to talk about some of these terms, because as we start to troubleshoot with issues that you might have or things that you've seen before, when I go to explain it, I don't want to just solve that one problem you have. I want you to have a bigger understanding of the whole scope of what's going on. So we'll talk about some things that might not seem necessarily relevant at the start for whatever issue you might be experiencing in your day-to-day life, but it will all come back around. And having a general knowledge of this stuff, like a USB cable, there's different types of them, and sometimes they go bad. So actually knowing the different types of USB cables that might go from your printer to your computer, it is going to be important. You don't have to remember every single term, but just being aware of the process will then be like how you start to troubleshoot, because then you can go through step by step. Turn it on, turn it off again, that sort of deal. Is the cable bad, etc. So I think that's pretty straightforward, but I'm going to go into a little more in-depth view of each category. So hardware, there's a wide range of hardware now in this day and age. Internally, your computer has memory, your RAM. It has a thing called a processor. So your Intel processor, all this works together to give you, a nice laptop. Your internal hard drive and your graphics card. So on a day-to-day basis, you're not dealing with that. But if you start to have glitches on your screen or it turns a certain color, it could be your graphics card's going bad. This was a relatively new laptop, and I think a year into it, my screen was blanking out, and it was under warranty. It was a graphics card issue. So you experience an issue like that, you're going to go somewhere usually, whether it's the Mac place in Ellsworth or PC place down the street, and they'll be able to troubleshoot that stuff. If you're a little more tech savvy, you could replace some of it. I've upgraded my own RAM before in my laptops. It's a great way that you could keep it relevant as technology advances and your laptop gets older. Apple can be evil sometimes, and they actually solder your RAM onto your computer so you can't upgrade it, and you have to buy a new computer. Your hard drive is what holds all of your information. And has anybody ever had a computer crash because their hard drive went bad? Okay, so I have before, lost everything that I didn't have backed up. Back in the day, they had disk drives, so it was literally something spinning and being read. And those were very prone to damage. They get hot, they get worn out, the motor breaks, there was lots of issues. Now they have solid state drives that are much more efficient, versatile, and tough to help last. So those are some of the internal parts of the computer. And then externally, you'll have your mouse or your trackpad, like the little surface on the laptop. I know some of the older laptops have the little thumb, I always forget the name of it. It's like the little nub that could control like a cursor. Sometimes it'd be in the center of the keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
Your keyboard, you have your USB ports, your audio ports, all on the side here. So, your audio port would be where you'd plug in your headphones, and your USB, where you can plug in devices. Additionally, you can have other types of hardware that you would use, like external hard drives. Does anybody use an external hard drive? Do you use a thumb drive? Flash drive? Yep. So those are external hard drives. They're just different ways to store stuff for a safety backup or to give somebody a copy. And additional accessories, headphones. Sometimes you have an extra web camera. If you let's say you have a desktop. Anybody know what a dongle is?
I do.
You do?
I had a computer at a sewing machine that had a dongle.
A dongle.
Yeah.
A lot of this is Apple's fault. And I like Apple, but they're evil sometimes. So this is an example of a dongle. This converts like a TV cable, HDMI, to USB. So you could plug your computer into your TV or into a projector, which puts it on the screen.
Is that what you use to get your pictures off of your phone to put onto your computer?
So,
or can you?
Theoretically, you'd probably just use the USB cable and plug it directly into your computer. But if you wanted to use a memory card on your cell phone, sometimes you'd have one of these, or your iPad. So you could plug this in the bottom of the iPad and use your camera's memory card, could slide in, and your pictures would show up. So this is another example of a dongle here. And you can see this one's a lot bigger. It's got an internet plug-in, USB memory card, quite a bit. I'll talk a little more about that.
And what's that doing for you now? Running on your...
It's actually running that HDMI. It's the same thing as this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the TV cable, the HDMI cable coming out of the projector goes in here and converts it to a USB. Nowadays, I'm really hoping they're going to stick to this. This is a USB-C, they call it. This is the new one. But they've been changing them over the years. But this one's very fast and it's multi-purposed. So you can run internet through it, you can run your projector, you can charge it. So hopefully this is the next one for at least 5-10 years.
One of the most important dongles I have is called a Chromecast. It's a little thing that hangs on the back of my TV, and my computer can talk to the Chromecast, and whatever I might want to watch, I don't have cable TV. I stream all my television from the internet we can now, even with the lousy internet we have, but when the broadband is here, you'll be able to get rid of your this, what is it called?
DirecTV or Dish Network.
Yeah. All that stuff, because you can literally stream almost everything that they're offering you if you have the little dongle that talks to your computer. Now my Mac products all have a built-in thing that'll talk to the television directly, a wireless connection, if you will. That's for the newer TVs and the newer computers.
Yeah,
So
we have a Fire Stick. It's
Yes.
same idea, only that's Amazon's product,
Yeah,
and it
and
would do exactly the same thing.
Apple has a like Apple TV, they have kind of
Yes.
some. Everybody has their own
Mhm.
little thing there. I have Chromecast in my house, so I
When
can
you get
sit on the
one,
couch,
you get a smart one.
and in the app itself, like Disney
We hope we
Plus,
get one.
you can connect right to the
We haven't had
dongle
one for
that's on the
20
TV.
Really.
And one of the things Sue asked is about her pictures. And I've got a constant photo exhibition going on my TV when we're not watching it because the photos on my computer are revolving into the little dongle on the back of the TV so that there's something to look
Like
at.
an old school screensaver.
I was just gonna say that the way my screensaver
Yeah.
used to be back in the day.
Yeah,
exactly.
I really enjoyed it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, any questions about hardware? I mean, you're really not going to deal with this aspect unless you're experiencing a problem on your computer. But going forward, let's say you come to one of my tech troubleshooting workshops and you have a PC and it's having trouble running Zoom, and you tell me your laptop is from like 2009, 2010, I'm going to then tell you, well, it's because you don't have enough memory in there, and for the the graphics card's probably old too. Running a higher quality video program is going to cause you trouble. So I'll probably tell you to upgrade.
So the dongle, does that, can you back up files to the dongle or not? Or
So
Is it like a
theoretically,
flash
a dongle is just a vessel to convert
Oh.
to a different type of cable or wireless connection. It's just a mode of transportation from your device to whatever screen or hard drive you're connecting to. And you'll see, I'll jump ahead real quick, but I think there's, here we go. There's almost limitless types of dongles. Like this one connects to the older iPhone and converts it to a headphone jack because they got rid of the headphone jack. This one is another multi-purpose that goes into USB-C and converts, if you want to plug in just a regular USB device, like charging your watch or something. And you'll also see some that will run internet. This one's another multi-purpose. You can see a memory card here that you can slide in.
So some of those devices can help you charge your device or not?
So, like I wouldn't plug in my charger into the dongle and then run it to the computer.
Okay, and that doesn't need to be charged?
Nope.
That just
So
needs to be
these are
fed into-
actually powered by USB. It's
Okay,
like a
comes
bus
together.
power.
Okay.
Yeah, so like this, for example, will just be powered through the because your computer can charge a device,
Mhm.
like a Kindle, for example. So it's using that same type of power to convert the signal. Things like the Google Chromecast will actually use AC power. They will be plugged in. So sometimes you'll see that. But everything's a little bit different. These basic dongles will just be powered by your device.
I noticed that you did not have CD players mentioned. Are they
Yeah.
simply a thing of the past now?
They're getting to be that point. They're not building them into any of the Macs anymore. I actually have an external DVD recording player where I can burn a disc.
So,
Yeah, you can buy those. You can get them on Amazon probably. They connect through USB, powered the same way. But yeah, it's so much faster to have like a flash drive or a thumb drive and throw the file on that and then give that to somebody than it would be to burn a disc. And then with music, everything, your iPod's kind of obsolete and now it's just built into your cell phone or on your iPad that you're playing from. So it is a data technology. I think that is going out of the way.
how do you convert a CD to a flash drive?
So in that situation, you would have to have one of those external CD or DVD players, and you'd have to plug that in, put the disc in. It will show up on your desktop like a hard drive or a flash drive. You could access the files and you would transfer them that way. So it'd be a complicated process, but you can do it. And I've done that before. I had somebody who needed a slideshow for just a birthday party. I'm like, do you know how to burn a DVD? Because it's kind of a lost art, but you can do it. You just have to have that extra device. Some of the PCs will still have them, like the older ones, but Mac got rid of it quite a long time ago, which is a good thing. It saves a lot of weight. That's a big component to have inside of a laptop. So, but it's something to think about. If you had a bunch of stuff stored on there from 10 years ago, and you want to make sure that's preserved or have access to it, converting that is probably a thing you might want to do before we get too far down the rabbit hole. Also, that technology is limited. Like CDs will actually deteriorate over time, especially in poor conditions. So in terms of software, there's your operating system, and this is probably the most important thing to know, is that it's divided up basically into Windows and Mac. So Mac OS is the operating system, and it might be High Sierra that's on your Mac or your MacBook Pro. I forget what the current one is now, but Yosemite was one for a while. They always change them, but it's the same idea. That this is the interface, the thing that you're using on your computer that makes it run. And just like on a PC, if you have an HP, if you have a Dell, you're running Windows, Microsoft. You remember the old desktop picture of the green hill and the blue skies? That's Windows. And I don't know how much truth is in this, but what I always understood was that they split and Mac decided to kind of take the educational route and Windows took the private sector and business route. So you'll see a lot of businesses be running Windows operating system and using a PC, and then in schools, the kids will have MacBooks and colleges and stuff like that.
So if you have an iPad or an iPhone, those are Apple products.
Yep.
And so which?
See right here, iOS.
So
that is their operating system for tablets and mobile devices.
Okay.
It's an extension of Mac OS, but it's not quite the same. It's actually a little bit different that they built specifically for mobile devices.
So when you get your notification about updating or whatever it's called,
Yeah, your
like you
software
go from,
update.
and then there's a number that follows that, like it'll go only as far as 14 or 15. That's the iOS part. That's the Apple
Yeah,
side.
so it'll say 14.5.2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes
Sometimes.
some days it just is not going any further.
Yeah, and sometimes too, like your device, if like let's say this phone is 6 years old, it might not actually be able to run the most current version, and it will stop.
Yeah.
Mac actually got in trouble. Apple got in trouble through the iPhone 5 because they were going in and they were tweaking the operating system and slowing the phone down. They said to conserve battery life, but what happened was the phones acted up. People went and bought new ones. So, sometimes I think they've gotten a little bit better in terms of the oversight, making sure companies aren't doing that. But as your device gets older and older and older, sometimes running a new operating system on there can actually slow it down.
And just another, if I may,
Yeah,
another question.
absolutely.
For instance, forever I've had like an Android phone, but I have an iPad at home. And then my friends were like, get rid of it, get an iPhone. So was there ever a time that like the Android phone and the iPad ever try to do business together? I mean, is there any conversion that's going on? in
Yeah,
there?
it's really frustrating. I mean, I have a Samsung cell phone, which is
Yeah.
Android, and this is an iPad, this is a MacBook.
Yeah,
I thought about switching, and the guy at the cell phone store was like, don't do it.
yeah.
Because you do get more features in terms of Android, like you'll get more sometimes memory. A lot of times there's an SD slot you can
Right.
use to expand it. There are benefits to it, but the way I usually think about it is Windows is what they call an open system, and Mac is a closed system. So Mac is more expensive sometimes because you're paying for a higher design level and interface that's user friendly. So Mac is designed to be ease of use, and it's closed, meaning you can't bring in third-party apps that are going to give you a virus and kill your computer. And PCs are open so that you can accessorize and build out and improve.
And get a virus.
And you could get a virus, right? So in terms of that aspect, if you kind of have a decent understanding of technology to some degree, you can benefit from having a PC or an Android.
Okay. But as far as like storage and things going onto the
Yeah,
iCloud,
different.
can it go off from an Android phone into that too, or is that only for iPhone?
So one of the big battles going on right now between
Because I've just been very stupid for a long time, and they start
Yeah.
talking to me, I go, I don't know, I get this bill on my little, credit card statement for what I'm hiring this space for, and I don't know what's happening in there, you know?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that cloud storage too, because that's a huge thing. But to answer your question, I mean, no, they've never been synonymous with one another.
Yeah.
They've always been divided. And the big battle going on right now is Google basically wanting Apple to open up iMessage to their devices. Because if you're texting from one iPhone to another, it sends what's called an iMessage, which is not a text message. So if you go to send an iMessage to somebody who's an Android, sometimes they don't work as well together. So, and that's because they're separate. And Apple keeps it locked in, says, you know, you got to pay for an iPhone if you want that feature. But for a while, their phones were defaulting to iMessage only. So you'd be texting somebody who had an iPhone and they weren't getting it if you had an Android. It's so frustrating. And it, you know, in terms of digital literacy and learning curve, it just magnifies that. Like having to explain somebody the difference between texting and iMessage and cloud storage, it's so frustrating. So hopefully they'll work around it. Like one thing, my wife has an iPhone, I have an Android. We just use Facebook Messenger to go back and forth, which is in theory the same idea as an iMessage, because iMessage is using your internet.
I've never heard of iMessage.
So if you have an iPhone, it's using the internet to send a message to somebody. Like remember AOL Instant Messenger? It's
No.
the same idea as that.
So now I'm gonna be billed for data use?
You could be, yeah. Like for example, sending videos, it's using cloud storage. So I don't want to go off too far on a tangent yet, but if I want to send a video in a text message, right? If I have an Android and I send it to my wife who has an iPhone,
Right.
it takes that video and compresses it really small and sends it through a text message, which is called an MMS or SMS. So a multimedia message there gets sent over and it will look really bad when she gets it. But if we both had iPhones, it would look good when she received it because it's using the iCloud. So it's uploading the video to the iCloud and essentially communicating a link over so she's viewing it from the iCloud and it preserves the quality. That will be something we'll explain down the road in terms of that process, but those are common problems that we have every day.
Yeah.
Right? I got this video and it's all pixelated. I
It's
can't see
that and the charging, like when you don't wanna use your time, or you're gonna use up your whatever, and what I'm saying. So if I'm in my house using it, does it automatically go to internet work versus, phone work? And then, all that kind of stuff is just a big blur to me, so.
The easy answer is to
I'll
make
come
sure
back
you're
every week.
if you're always connected to Wi-Fi, you're going to avoid the data charges,
Right,
right? So when you're at home, your phone should always be on Wi-Fi.
how do you do that?
Like your device, if it's Samsung, there should be a wireless
Yeah,
option that you'll click on and connect to your wireless router at home, which
If it
Uh,
works,
You've got an Apple.
which it does, of course.
yeah.
your Wi-Fi.
I just got
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
It just goes on and
You
off.
wanna do it? 'Cause
So,
there's Wi-Fi
you know-
here.
And you know what a big
I just want, she was.
So a big issue with that is that iCloud storage. If you have auto save like on your
So then
iCloud,
I'll just go to Wi-Fi.
do you have an iPhone?
When I'm back.
No, I have an Android.
Go right now.
Okay. So you might have like OneDrive or something like that that saves your information, or if it's
Yeah.
an iPhone,
Yes.
you have iCloud.
No, I don't have that automatic upload thing because of the internet.
Yeah, the second.
Okay, because sometimes that's the biggest culprit.
Well, I
Because
don't need it.
With the way, and I'll explain
But that's
this
how you
stuff
do it
too, but
in
with
the
our
internet.
internet, when you start
anywhere
uploading
here.
and sending a file to the cloud, it shuts the network down. So like when I have guests come over to my house, like the first thing I'll do is tell them, can you turn off your iCloud backup? Because as soon as you get in, they've been driving in Maine for hours and they get in, they come into my house, my internet shuts down because both their phones are connected on Wi-Fi trying to upload all their photos to their cloud.
And our upload is typically slower
Horrible.
than the download.
Yes,
A
like
lot.
one. And
Yeah.
the way the DSL works is the network shuts down when it's uploading. With the newer broadband that's coming, it's actually symmetrical. So if you get 100 megabits per second or 500, you'll get that in upload also. And you'll find, I think you'll be able to do both at the same time. It'll be okay.
So will you be covering some of the security aspects in these 4 sessions?
Yeah, probably more so when we get into the second session of Digital Basics 2. Because the goal now is just to cover some of these basic terms and then go into like some aspects of moving a file around and knowing where that is. And then once we do that, then we can talk about backing it up online, downloading files, sending files, buying stuff online. But I definitely can talk a lot about safety online, protecting your passwords. Somebody had mentioned about a program. And so, yeah, we can definitely talk about that.
Because somehow, I don't want to go more on a tangent, but it seems to me that we're so oversold by tech companies, do this, do that, you could do all these things. And, I don't know, I find as I age, I'm going more simple. So I actually don't want my iPhone to talk to my desktop.
Yeah.
And I need to figure out how to do that. And I don't know that I need all these bells and whistles, because I'd rather talk to people, or I'd rather be out in nature. And I think the biggest draw, for me anyway, maybe other people, is it is fun to do iPhoto, right? I mean, it's fun to click photos, but often I don't do anything with
Right.
them. I might send it
And
to
I think that's the
somebody.
thing you'll find with Apple, is they're excessive in the sense of, it's the system and everything communicates to one another. The PC world, that doesn't exist as much. I mean, it is there, Google does
It was never
that.
a good graphic. You didn't have
But
that.
I agree. I find it frustrating where I'm I don't need it to do all of that. But you have two categories.
But I'm also, at this point, I'm more concerned with security.
Yeah.
Because I am not a security analyst. I I'm not sure I want to spend so much time figuring out how to be secure in my situation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to boil down to a few basic things. Number one, don't use the same password for every single site. That's rule number one. But
hope
you'll be
most
amazed.
people aren't doing
Everybody does. So
Really?
many people.
that. Okay.
And
I do.
your email will get leaked. It will be compromised. That is almost a given. It will happen. There will be a newsletter you sign up for that is then hacked, and they get your email address. It will happen. It's one of those things. It doesn't mean your whole identity's been compromised, but if they got your password to that site and that's the same password you use on your email, they would have access to everything once soon as they log into your email. Google's gotten much better in terms of verification and letting you know if there's suspicious activity, but that's the biggest culprit, is people using the same password on multiple sites. And really, your ones like your bank and anything like that you're doing online, I definitely, even your Google password, I suggest changing. Every 3 months, just change it. I've had my information leaked. Somebody in Australia, they were trying to book Hertz rentals and Domino's Pizza. And I'm a pretty secure person. I like to think I know what I'm doing, but it just happens, especially the more you're doing online. Equifax
So
had a
are you
leak.
doing financial transactions on your phone?
Yeah,
You are? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm never doing that.
yeah.
I never do.
But see, there's one important thing about that though, is it's not necessarily a world that you want to just turn your back to, because if something suspicious does start happening, you won't know, right? So there's just certain things you can do, for example, your credit report, the different credit bureaus, you can put a freeze on the accounts so nobody could go and take out a mortgage, and it will let you know about activity. Those would be good things to just at least be aware of and to have and be signed up for. And that's stuff we can talk about going into
That'd
it.
be great to review
But
this.
just so you know, Equifax lost everyone's, pretty much every adult in America,
Yeah.
and you're talking social security number, email. So it's kind of already at this point too late. It's already out there. It's just being vigilant, and there's certain steps you can take, to protect yourself.
I thought you said that you said that you'd been hacked, right?
Some of my
you've been
information was
compromised in some way or
compromised. Yeah.
another. I thought you said that the Mac wasn't,
A closed system.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. So when that happened, it was because I had information in a website, which I think more than likely was actually Equifax. It's impossible to know, because this stuff will get leaked. They won't use it till months later. It's the same idea as you ever had a credit card get compromised?
Mm.
So it could be a gas machine that has a skimmer on it, and then you don't know until 6 months later. But it wasn't a virus that had done it. It was my information being stored somewhere else that was leaked. And I had a password that I used for a few things like Hertz, Domino's, and it was the same password for those sites. So all they had to do is use my email and that password, and it worked on a few. And trust me, like they'll have programs that will run through a whole slew of websites just testing them to see if it works, you know? So that's the number one thing. It's
And
just
this could be anybody around the world.
in Australia,
That's
for example.
So,
Yeah.
so does that
It usually
mean
is in another country.
your email, even without you clicking on a email, if you.
In terms of that information
Yeah.
getting compromised, yeah. So
Can
like,
they- Can your system be accessed even if you don't open up an email that comes to you from a negative source?
yeah. So when you're on a PC, you have to be hyper vigilant because email things will come in, and if you clicked on it and downloaded it, that could be bad.
Right.
The number one way people get hacked is they get sent a link and they click on it and it says, "Oh, re-enter your
So
information for
you're
Facebook."
responding to
Yeah.
something that you really
Yeah.
don't know,
So, yeah.
and you can usually hover and see, you know.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
mine shows me the first two sentences or something of the email without
Yeah.
my opening it. But technically, is that open already or?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's just a preview.
Okay.
And
As
you'll
long
see
as you don't
like,
click on it.
you know,
long as you don't
spam
click on it
filters
now.
will get better.
Some of these folks are selling our email addresses, right?
Yeah.
So they can get out without it's not even a password issue, it's just commerce. They batch up email addresses of what interest, you pick an interest, and they sell it to a company, and you get emails from these
Yeah,
companies.
data brokers.
Yeah.
And does unsubscribe really mean unsubscribe, or is it just inviting them to
You mean-
get you another way?
Then they send you an email saying, "Thanks for unsubscribing." You're like,
Yeah.
"No, stop." It depends. You know, if like I remember the day when my email actually hit the dark web because my inbox blew up with thousands of messages, and then Google spam filters finally kicked in and categorized it. But if I go to my spam folder, I'll look. There's probably 100 emails a day, but I never see them. They just exist in there. So
And what happens to your spam folder? Do you have to delete that?
it deletes automatically
Yeah.
after 30 days on Google.
Okay, and what about your, like, what was happening to me, and I tried to explain it to Mac Revival, but it seemed to me that on my iPad, if I hit trash, I thought it was gone. So then I went from trash later and went to delete out of trash, and then it seemed like all that went into my junk folder. You know what I'm saying? Does it hop that way? Then what happens if it gets into the junk? So I
Yeah.
got very confused.
Sometimes you'll send it to the trash, and then you have to actually delete the trash.
Right.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't seem to go. And then today I just opened up, and I had emails from July 2020, and where'd that come from? You know, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's like I don't want to make you super paranoid when you leave here. It's important to be vigilant about stuff,
Yeah.
and I do believe that being completely abstinent from any sort of online stuff can be dangerous because you don't know if anything's going on. So like being in tune with Equifax and TransUnion, for example, are good ways to stay vigilant on your identity online. A lot of them offer great free tools. Like TransUnion, I think, has a free tool. It's credit monitoring.
So how do you know
Just
what to
let you
trust, though?
So I can get into that, but you'll see when you, like, if you were to type in, like, say you Googled TransUnion, you'll see the site pop up and you'll click on it and there'll be a little encryption, like padlock.
Right.
And usually looking at the URL will give you a really big clue. Do you know what a URL is?
No.
The address?
So it's, yeah,
The
it's,
HTTPS?
yep. So that's what we call URL, or a link, or a web address. And a lot of times when people would get, like, scammed on Facebook and they click on a message and it sends them to another thing, says log into Facebook again, that's actually spam because it sends you, and if you looked at the URL bar, it'd be different. It wouldn't be facebook.com. It would be something else, like fbook.com, something weird. So, but they'll design it so it looks just like Facebook. They get shut down over time, but that's probably the biggest culprit. But checking the URL, making sure that it's like www.facebook.com, and you'll see the encryption up there too, which is a certificate, a safety certificate. I explain a lot of this, probably more so in Digital Basics too,
Okay.
but yeah. So I don't, I love talking about this stuff. I could do this all night, but I don't want to dive into all of it before we have covered the
Okay.
basic terminology, because otherwise you'll kind of be all over the place.
I think it is important to be vigilant. but not to go crazy. I had Windows when I started on computers, when I didn't have gray hair or children, and had all kinds of virus problems and issues and stuff happened. We went to Apple products 20 years ago. Never have a virus. Never have a virus.
Mhm.
Now that's different than having your email compromised and getting hacked and other things. But it's like a lot of folks are just so agitated over getting hacked and getting this and getting that. And it's like if you get a good computer that's up to date and you get a guy like this helping you, it's fine. Because the future is all about this. Banks are going to disappear. You get a check in the mail anymore. It's hard to deposit it, right? But you can use this phone to deposit
To
that.
get on a plane,
Yeah.
You can't get on a plane anymore.
And you don't have to go crazy,
Yeah.
but like, you know, sometimes paying for something can be beneficial, like iCloud storage. You know, do they charge you $1.99 a month for an extra 100 gigabytes? Like to me, that saves me the hours every month of going through and deleting my photos. I just pay $2 a month and don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So
And they're there.
you can be super organized and have to do the work and save the $2 a month, or you can just have peace of mind and
Or have it and not know what's going on.
yeah, I mean, and that happens a lot of the times. I think companies are under the microscope more so than they've ever been before. So when these corporations are doing these types of practices, I think they're well aware now that they can't be scamming people by like just charging them for no reason for nothing. I think Norton Antivirus is probably a big one that does it automatically renews. Like, what is this?
Yeah, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
So those are operating systems. As we kind of discussed, PCs theoretically would be more open and vulnerable to viruses, and that's because of what we call third-party applications. These are computer companies making different types of programs that are not sponsored by Dell or HP. So if you go to the Google Play Store, you know, on your Android, those are third-party apps.
Oh.
Some of them are actually verified through Google, but sometimes they're not. And
So if it shows up on Play Store, it still could be anybody.
yeah,
There's no.
it says Google Play Protect, I think they call it, and that means it's been certified.
Okay.
But yeah, and you could a good way to tell is if the app like doesn't have a lot of reviews. You know, if it's got 100
Check that.
reviews, like because Facebook will have like, you know, 200 million reviews or something crazy like that. But if it's some weird app that has, you know, 29 reviews, it's probably a little sketchy. We'll talk more about that, but iPhone has it protected. Anything in the Apple Store, in the App Store, is verified through Apple and will not give you a virus, theoretically.
Is it possible to switch from a PC to a Mac and transfer your files? For instance, I've got years worth of Word documents that I want to keep.
Yes, yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's probably cloud storage is an easy way to do that. So if you had Google Drive or something, I think OneDrive is.
But I mean, could I access them on the Mac
Yeah,
as Word document?
on Mac, yeah. But if you created a Pages document in Mac and sent it to PC, you couldn't. So Mac has Pages, which is their Microsoft Word program.
Okay, yeah, I've
And it
seen
can
that on-
open a DOC file, which is Microsoft Word. So you could access them. If you had created a Microsoft Word file, and let's say you stored it online in Google Drive, and downloaded that to your Mac, you could open it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the answer is yes.
Most of the time. So then you have creative applications we talked about, like iPhoto, which now they just call it Photo, I think. iMovie, Photoshop, GarageBand. These are creative things that you might use. I use Final Cut Pro to edit video. Most people might use iMovie. We've already talked about some of these storage applications, such as iCloud, Google Drive, Time Machine. I think Microsoft is OneDrive. I'm not sure if I'm missing any others. These are all online storage cloud options. And you can access these through the device itself, or you can actually go to a URL, like a website, to do it.
So once you've gone up here, is there ever any way you can like, if I died, is there any way anybody can ever erase that existence, or is it just forever?
Yeah. If you didn't
Is
have
this
it,
the new eternity? I don't know.
if you didn't have it set to pass on to somebody, it would probably just exist there until it was obsolete.
Okay.
But you can have legacy options. I know Facebook can do that. You can have legacy access for Facebook. So if something happens, someone can have control over it to shut it down or whatever you want. Same thing with iCloud. You could have other users access it.
But is there a way to erase it, to just?
Single dead.
Not unless you had your finger on the
If you
delete
stop
button right
paying
before
it,
you went.
if you stop
Yeah.
paying, does it stop playing?
Eventually, yeah. I
Well,
think.
I think things exist forever,
Yeah.
in one form
That's
or
scary
another
to
out
me,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I'll be around to care about it, but it's still like a very
Just the
bizarre
thought
thing.
of it.
Well,
Yeah.
when you says functional applications, what's,
So
the only thing I recognize on that whole list is photos. Well, QuickTime, but I don't really know what it is.
Yeah, so like a lot of these are for Mac based.
Oh,
So Finder is the way to navigate through files on your computer, to look at your documents folder, to look at your downloads folder. Preview is the applications that's used when you open up a file like a PDF or a JPEG in Mac.
Are you aware of it when you're doing it? Does that word show
I'd say
up?
probably most people are not. It's pretty
Oh.
seamless,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's going to be important to know because when we talk about moving files around and creating folders, you're doing that in Finder. So
only if you're on a Mac.
on a Mac, yeah.
Mhm.
But I'll show you. I can show you the file structure. It's very similar on your your start menu on a PC. It's essentially accessed the same way. QuickTime in Mac is what's used to view movie files. So if you were to watch a movie on your computer, it's using QuickTime.
Same as an iPad?
Yeah,
Okay.
but you're probably not noticing it when it's happening. And Pages is like the Microsoft Word for Mac.
Oh,
Safari is a web browser, just like Internet Explorer, and Firefox, and Chrome. So there's some functional things that we'll talk about that helps you just navigate through the computer. But I think, as you mentioned, a lot of them probably happen pretty seamlessly where you're not really aware that you're in the program. And then some social applications like FaceTime, Zoom, Mail for using your email. I would say even iMessage, which you could have on your iPad, and your iPhone, and even your MacBook when you're talking to people.
Could you talk about what the difference is between FaceTime and Zoom?
Yeah.
Because I have a 3-year-old, grandnephew, and they want to Zoom all the time, and then so I
Yeah.
can do that, but I don't know what FaceTime means, and they.
Did you ever use Skype? Anybody
yeah,
use Skype?
a long time ago.
Yeah, it was horrible. I hated it. It's kind of amazing because we've had this technology for quite a while. And when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden there was this realization that we can use this everywhere, all the time. And Google had their own version of it. I think at that time now it's Google Meets and Google Duo. It was something else. And then FaceTime existed, but none of them really had worked it out to have a group call with a bunch of people. And Zoom stepped up and delivered this platform. So Zoom is basically video conferencing. It's just a way to get a bunch of people online in a room to talk with one another. You can actually do it in FaceTime, and you can do it through Google, but they really didn't capitalize on it correctly.
So Zoom is easier to use than FaceTime, maybe?
I disagree. I think
Oh.
FaceTime's easier to use, but to figure it out, they just didn't do it, and they didn't do it well enough. So
Doesn't it have to be iPhone to iPhone?
Right.
yes, or
So
iPad,
You want to make sure that your 3-year-old has an iPhone.
and it would show up.
His parents.
Yeah.
FaceTime has.
It would show up like on
Yeah,
the contact
right.
as an
Because it's
option.
on Zoom.
Yeah.
Android
Because
actually
I
has
have
their own
Android,
as well.
So I don't do FaceTime.
So you'll see when you have a contact, there's a video call button, and if they had an Android, it would go through. Google has their own, which I use quite a bit. Theirs is called Duo, it's like FaceTime. But
Does FaceTime have the capability to have the gallery view? Or do you just have to all kind of scrunch together?
if you add multiple people into FaceTime, it kind of just adds them in there, splits up the screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's partly because FaceTime is really designed for face-to-face or just with a couple people.
Right.
Zoom is great where you could have 40, 50 people in there. but it's a different animal, right? You have to download the program. The Zoom class, we'll do it fresh from the start. We'll actually download Zoom right from the website, install it through the computer. We'll go through that process. And there's a bit of a learning curve with it. It's a new software program. So you can have an app, a Zoom app on your phone that works, and you can do it on desktop as well, or on your iPad.
So when you're using Zoom, are you going out on your internet time? Okay.
Yeah, it uses the internet and it uploads a video signal online. So when we jump into internet speeds and stuff like that, that's a
Okay.
big factor.
Why don't you have Facebook and all of that under social applications?
Partly because like Facebook is not one you're gonna necessarily have an application for on your computer. Like you'd have it on your cell phone. But I didn't list it here because it's in my opinion, it's a web service rather
I
than
see.
a software that's used like
Mhm.
for functional purposes. But a lot of people have the Facebook app right on the phone. But from a computer standpoint, I would go to the Facebook.com website versus having, that's just how I work. But it is, if it's an app, it's on your phone, it could be a social application. So I just want to see comfort level with some of this stuff, where you're all at. Desktop, documents, folders, files. How confident are you, and it's okay if everybody's different, with working with that? Like, can you create a new folder on your desktop? Okay. You know how to navigate between your documents folder and your downloads folder.
Sometimes.
Some of this might not apply as much if you're using like an iPad, for example. They still exist there, but it's going to be different than on a laptop or a desktop.
Now, I don't know how to save things. Like if I have an email from someone, I don't know how to save that. Am I trying to create a folder for that? Is that what a folder is? It's just a storage?
Yeah, an
Things.
organizational tool.
Okay.
So your computer has a file structure. Let's start with your hard drive, right? Just like we're going to break it down like a family tree. You have a hard drive, and then that will be broken up into different folders, like your user, and then under you, you'll have your desktop, documents, pictures, movies. Like they're all folders that exist, and you can move stuff around. And it's a great tool to kind of get organized, to save space, to understand where things are going. And I think tonight we'll have time to do it. I'm going to just do a dry run of downloading a picture in an email, saving it to my computer, and moving it. But what I'm going to show you tonight is going to be on a MacBook. It should be kind of similar on a PC, but we'll go through that. And we'll talk about right-click in a second. I know we're kind of everywhere between that. One thing I'll mention is Start Menu or Finder. And Finder is going to be how I'm going to show you to save the file and move it around. Finder is the functional application that's going to be used on Mac to move stuff around. It's the way we access the file structure of the computer. So on your PC, you'll have the little Start menu in the bottom left that pops up, and there's like a quick menu of things and documents. That would be how you access that. Just in Mac, they call it Finder. It does exist on the iPad, but it's not really used that way because it's an iOS, right? It's a different operating system. And how are you with minimizing and maximizing windows? Yeah, do you know how to use that, like those 3 buttons in the corner? Close it out, for example. This is something we really won't dive into because everybody's different. But shortcuts might be something I mentioned. There's different shortcuts for doing things on your computer, like copying and pasting. That can be so much easier than going through the actual file structure of the program and selecting edit, copy, paste, etc. So we'll talk about that at some point. But so the right click is mostly going to apply to your laptop, your desktop, your computer. It's sort of the same idea on an iPad when you hold it down and you let go and you get some options up there. Your right click is just a way to use whatever file you're interacting with, it's a way to have some different options when you're dealing with it. So, and the list is almost endless, but we also call it a control click. So on a mouse, you got left and right clicks on it. That's the right click, which I don't have a mouse on my MacBook, so I would hold control and I would click on the trackpad. And this menu pops up, and it's always going to change depending on whatever type of file you're interacting with. So it's going to look different when you right click on a picture. It's going to look different than when you right click on a Word document. Sometimes the options will relatively be the same, but it's just one thing to know that when you right click it, you're not always going to get the same exact menu.
Why are you right click? What are you doing?
So if we want to open it, if we want to save it, if we want to send it somewhere, if we want to put it in the trash, these are all ways we can interact with it. And like you'll see here, I know it might be hard to read kind of in the back, but to open, normally we just double click, right? Or tap on it on a tablet. But sometimes I might want to open it with a specific program. Let's say it's a PDF and I want to open it with Adobe Acrobat, which allows me to interact with it a little more. That will give you options. Sometimes, like, you ever open up a picture and it just goes right to your iPhoto library? Not for you because you have a PC.
Oh, right.
But like if you want to open up a photo or music, it will just automatically open up your music application and start playing. Sometimes I don't want that. Sometimes I want to take that file and I want to just look at it real quick, or I want to send it somewhere. So I can open it with specific programs. Moving it to the trash, that's a big one that I use because I'm trying to actually drag it and drop it down in, and I miss it, and it ends up like kind of behind the trash icon and still on the desktop. To me, it's just, right click move to trash, right click move to trash. That's just how I work. Everybody's a little bit different, but
Is that the same as delete?
sometimes, yeah. Not always. Get info. This is a big one. When you want to know more about it, like, let's say you have 2 different Word documents, and you want to know which one's the current version. You could right click get info and it'll tell you the last time one was modified. So it might tell you, okay, this was 3 days ago, you modified this, the other one was 20 days ago, so it's the old version. Let's say you want to know how big a file is. How big is the picture or the video? Is it 1 gigabyte? Is that why it's not sending somewhere? That's where you get all that information. You can rename it. So if you create a folder and it's untitled folder, and you keep trying to click on the name to change the name and it's not working, you would right click, select rename, and then you could type it in. Compressing, I know I'm going through this stuff fast, but this is just to give you a brief overview. Compressing is like how you create a zip file. So if you had 5 Word documents or 5 pictures that you want to put in one folder, you can select them all, right click, compress, and it would zip them into a file, and then you send that.
And then you name that file?
Yeah, you could rename it, yeah.
I mean, if you don't...
It would just be like, if it's a folder that you're zipping, it would just be the name of the folder. But what I'll do, like, let's say for my taxes, I gotta send all my receipts to my accountant. So I would have the scans of all my receipts in a folder, and it might be called Receipts 2022, but I want to send her that folder, let's say through an email. What I'll do is compress it, make the zip file, so it takes it and makes it smaller, and puts it into one little file that I can send, so she'll open it and it expands. And I could rename it as to like Layton Receipts 2022 and send her that. So that's just one of many examples here. We have copy, we can share by airdropping. If you have multiple Mac devices, you could attach it to an email. You can organize it. So you'll see going forward when we deal with stuff that it's just a good tool to have to help move stuff around and interact with it. And there might be certain points where I have to right click, and I just want you to kind of know the purpose in that.
And that's going to work on this?
Yeah, it would be like control click.
Yeah.
Or right click if you have a mouse. Sometimes even your trackpad will be set where you can click on the right side, or with 2 fingers or something like that. And when I say files, I mean, a whole slew of things, which could be a JPEG, like a picture. It could be an MOV file, an MP4 file. Those are movies. Files are basically any image or document on your computer that you're interacting with. There are different types of files. So we've heard a lot of them, like PDF, for reading something, downloading like a form online. You ever accidentally save an email to your desktop and it will be like an HTML file? Yeah, so there's different types of file extensions that we'll see here, and all of them have different purposes. I mean, there's types of pictures like a JPEG or a PNG, TIFF files, CR2s, those are all pictures. You'll see more on the PC side of things than you would on Mac. Mac kind of has their own that they work with, like videos on the Mac are all their MOV files, but PC they might be MP4s. So when I say files, just know that it's kind of like a whole variety. And it's going to depend on what type of application you're in and what you're trying to do with it. So if you're trying to send a picture, like let's say you're trying to put it into an email, and you're running into issues. Let's say you took a video of your grandkids and it's about a minute long and you're trying to email it to a friend and it's not working. There's a very real reason for it, and it's going to come down to the file size and your internet. So,
And when it asks you if you want to like compress it, what does that mean?
yeah.
Are you losing something, or is it indiscriminately shortening the thing, or?
Have you ever printed a picture off Facebook?
No.
No. Anybody? You ever downloaded a picture from Facebook and then tried to print it? It looks okay when it's like this big, but if you tried to go any bigger, it looks awful. So that's compression. You're taking something, you're making the file size smaller and the quality smaller. So it might look okay on your cell phone, even on your computer, but if you're to really blow it up, put it on a projector, it's going to look pixelated or bad. Once you go down, you really can't go back. So,
But when it's offered on your phone, I mean, you're not controlling it. It's just going to be whatever that's programmed to do.
yeah, so like iCloud will give you an option of saving compressed versions of
Right.
everything, which will save you storage and space. But if you ever want to, do an 11 by 14 print of a really nice picture, it won't look good. You won't be able to do that.
Or if you want to send a picture to a newspaper or something, because they have to have a really high resolution.
Yeah.
And once you've done that with your pictures, it's no good for anything like that.
Yeah, we actually, like, if you have like an old yearbook photo, we would do scans of them at a really high resolution, like 300 DPI, and then we could stretch it and print it a little bit bigger. But it's still not quite the same. Once you really shrink it down, you're kind of stuck with that. And the way to think about compression is like a puzzle. So there's pixels, and you break that down. So let's say I want to ship a puzzle to my friend in California. I'm going to break it down into pieces, put it in a box, and send it out. And then they'll get it and reassemble it. So that's what your computers do. So it doesn't necessarily, compressing something doesn't always mean that you lose quality. Like a zip file compresses it down, breaks it down into a smaller, readable file type. And then your computer, when you receive it, puts that puzzle back together. But when it refers to like iCloud and storage, it's usually making it smaller. And you'll be stuck with it if that's the version that you have, which might be fine if you're only viewing it on the iPad and whatnot. Videos are just such a big culprit of a lot of the issues that we have, because all of our cell phones are recording movie files that are 1080 HD, high resolution. They look great, but you record for 30 seconds and you're talking, a gigabyte, 500 megabytes, which is huge. So just in terms of understanding that file size, we have kilobytes, just like you would have a teaspoon, tablespoon, in a cup. It's broken down the same way: kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, and terabytes. Your terabyte is huge. Your gigabyte's still pretty big. Kilobytes are really small. So without going too in depth into this, because I think we'll probably do this in the next class, but your internet kind of relates to this. It's not quite the same. make it confusing on purpose. It's megabits per second versus megabytes. And I think there's like 8 megabytes and 8 megabits per second is 1 megabyte. I think that's the algorithm. But essentially, when you're uploading something to the internet, your speed is dictated by size here. So a lot of us have crappy DSL that's, you know, running through the phone lines. And let's say like at my house, I have 8 megabits per second. And I have a video file that's 100 megabytes. I mean, that's gonna take that amount of time to actually upload it. So when you're taking these videos and trying to send it to somebody online while you're at home, that's what's going to slow your internet down, because it's trying to take that massive file size, send it through a very small, you know, internet speed. Think of it as a funnel, right? Trying to cram it all in. It's going to take a really long time to get through there. And with a lot of us, our internet will shut right down. So when we start talking even about, you know, megabytes or gigabytes, those are big file sizes. 1 gigabyte is big. You'll see with broadband that the internet speeds are actually gigabit speeds. So it will get better down the road. But as we advance in technology, things are getting bigger and they're getting faster. But our kind of infrastructure here is still in the kilobyte range, megabyte. Very small. Do you know what's usually the maximum size, I think, for an email for sending photos? You ever try to send photos through an email?
Mhm.
So after a while, I'll tell you that it's too large, it doesn't fit. So I think it's like 24 megabytes, something in that range. That's because email's not designed to send a whole slew of photos. You're not using the right application for that. But that is, I think, a good point for trying to think about this stuff in terms of file size, if it's big or not. So if you're trying to, like, you know, if you're working with a real estate agent and you're trying to send a movie file over of a walkthrough of a house, you know, I'm just throwing an example out here, that video file, if that's bigger than 24 megabytes, is going to have a hard time getting that on the internet to send to somebody.
And that's just in the transmission process. Once you've received it, it's not taking anything. I mean,
It's taking up hard drive space.
okay.
So
Same with your cell phone?
exactly.
Okay.
So videos, I'm going to say it again, videos are your biggest culprit with all of this. Like when your phone is full, you probably have a lot of videos and photos. And you can go into your storage and look, and it will tell you color coded. This is all photo and video. And your hard drive, like I think this has a 500 gigabyte hard drive or something built in. As we start to, you know, advance in technology with better camera resolutions and stuff, those file sizes are bigger and bigger and bigger. So your computer will fill up faster and faster and faster, or your cell phone.
Okay, but if somebody sent you a video,
Yeah.
then you watched it, then you deleted it, is it gone and it's not?
If you were to accurately delete it and remove it from the device, you'd be okay.
Okay.
Yeah. But you kind of have to stay on top of it.
Yeah, because one time, you know, I was like, feel so stupid when I go and say, you know, they go, okay, and they said, oh, you've got too much stuff, so then it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, how do we?
And then you'll get that constant notification of like your iCloud needs to be backed up, and
Yeah.
or it hasn't backed up because your iCloud storage is full. That's your online storage full of everything your cell phone's trying to send to it, and your cell phone is too much to get up there. So that can be a lot to handle, but that's why the organizational aspect of knowing where this stuff is going is important. Because otherwise you'll just keep downloading this stuff and you'll keep running into issues. Yeah.
A friend of mine showed me what I considered to be a miracle. When because I can only send 3 photos, you know, anytime and when we go out and we ride our bikes all day, and I've got 15 photos I want to send everybody. So I went to options on the iPhone, and you can send as many photos and videos as you want. So is that because they go to the cloud and then bounce back down? But some of them have Androids and they get them and they don't have any trouble.
Yeah. So
Now, I don't know how they keep them on their phone, because when they send them to me, I can't figure out how to save their photos.
yeah.
but
Well, so to kind of one thing at a time, in terms of how that's sending, like your MMS, which is the text, it's multimedia, instead of your SMS, which is like your standard text message of just, hey, what's up? If I send a picture, it turns it into an MMS, which
okay,
is,
this is email. This is not texting.
okay, so when you're emailing, okay, yeah, so it's using your iCloud. That's a little bit different, and I'll talk about that because what it's doing is, like with Google, for example, if you have a Gmail account and you add a bunch of photos in, it's actually storing those on your Google Drive, like temporarily, and then when that person gets the email, they'll see them, but they're actually viewing essentially what's a URL to your Google Drive, but it looks just like a photo, the way they've designed it. It was a workaround to deal
That's
with.
why she can't save them? Is that why she can't save them?
Maybe that would have to be actually the interface of looking where that is and then right-clicking on it and saving it. On your iPhone can be a little trickier, but Apple does it with iCloud, Google does it with their Google Drive. It was a workaround because text message like SMS and MMS were very limited with being able to send files. So an email as well. So by sending basically what is like a preview link, it might look like a small thumbnail, but when I click on it, it's actually pulling from the cloud to show me the picture or the video. So it's a clever workaround for dealing with these, big files. But, there can be some issues that you run into as you start to dive into that stuff. You should be able to download it. You shouldn't, be restricted from that.
Okay.
So I'm going to exit out right here. And I'm going to mirror my screen. So you're going to see what I'm seeing here. So how many of you are familiar with this type of computer interface, this operating system? I know you have a PC.
Yeah, I do too.
You do too?
I mean,
Okay.
I used somebody's Apple once and it was, I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I mean, they do. They look different. Yeah.
I'm back.
Okay. So you see down here in the bottom, this is Finder, this little kind of smiley face.
Oh yeah.
This is almost the same idea as on a PC, that start menu in the bottom left corner. You click on and it pops up and shows you your different programs and stuff. So I use this in a very similar way. There's, like we had said before, multiple ways to skin a cat. Like Mac also has your Launchpad, which this is almost the same idea as me opening up this thing that popped up here. Let me see if I can. See, I'm going to right click. I'm going to try to get this a little bit bigger. So you see by right clicking on that Finder at screen right there, I have some options where I could change some things there, like making it bigger.
Happened.
So we could. This size increased.
You did? Oh. Oh, the blue thing. Okay, I was looking.
Yeah, so that's a preview of the icon, right?
Okay.
Or like the text below it. So when I click on, like, for example, this is the Launchpad for Mac, which is a quick screen to get into your applications like Zoom, iPhoto. The Finder option is a similar idea as the Start menu, where it pops up, and I can access the file structure of the computer on the right side here. And everybody's a little bit different how they have it arranged, but you'll see if I click on Applications, it gives me what looks just like that Launchpad screen. So what I'm doing is using the organizational system in the computer to be able to go through and just do it manually rather than having like a quick screen to pop up. This gives me a little control over what I'm looking at. I can bounce back and forth. So when I click on Desktop,
Okay, but whether you pull it out of the bottom line menu bar or from that screen, it's the same thing, you're opening up the same thing.
Yeah, so like if I
It's
click
not
on
like you're
launch.
running, it's not like you're running two of those things, it's just one of those things.
Yep.
Shown two ways, okay.
So when I'm on the applications folder here, that's literally the same as when I click on that. If I click on Safari here, it's the same as clicking it in the applications folder or on the dock, they call it. So a PC almost looks the same in terms of this right here. The PC will have documents, should have a downloads, pictures, movies. And this is essential to get comfortable with, in my opinion, in understanding your computer and how it's working. Because I'm often going to be bouncing back and forth between what's in my downloads folder, what's in my documents folder, or even what's on my desktop. And you'll see there'll be other stuff down here like your iCloud, you could have access to that. You could have Google Drive on here, Microsoft OneDrive. So, and everybody's a little bit different how they work, but typically I'm using this because I'm gonna go up to the file structure up here. Are you all pretty familiar with this in terms of,
Used to have that.
if you want to edit, copy, and paste, or save as, you do that up here. PC's very similar. So you can create like a second window, Finder window, and you'll see that the file structure on each left side is the same, but this one here I'm in my applications folder, and this one here is just recent things that I've used, or it could be, for example, my desktop. So this should look somewhat familiar to some of you. This is Gmail. This is an email that's in here. This is a picture of my daughter. This is actually a great example. You see this right here? These three things? This is a picture in an email. This is save, add to my Google Drive. These are some options. This is that idea when I was talking about them taking photos and videos and putting them on Google
That
Drive.
means save means download,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And what is it downloading into?
I'll show you.
Okay.
If this was like big movie files, you might not even see that. It'll show you a movie symbol, and you click on it, and it will load and play. But that's because it's using Google Drive. It's like saving it to the cloud and giving you a preview. So this is something we probably all have come across before. This is an email with a picture. And I want to put it on my desktop. I want to save it. I love this picture. It's great. So there's this symbol here, and when I hover over it, it says download. If I click on that, something happened, right? It shows me in Google Chrome that I've recently downloaded a file, and I actually also had a little animation here of the downloads folder popping.
So that's your download folder?
Yeah. So this is on Mac. You can have it on your
Okay.
But
dock.
is that just, are you saving it to your Gmail file?
I have just taken it. So right now it's
Or
in my Gmail account,
Yeah.
and I've just taken that file and saved it to the hard drive of my
Oh, you
computer.
did. Okay, download.
But it's in my downloads folder, which I don't know about you, it can sometimes get messy over time. You
Yep.
can download lots and lots of stuff. So your download place, your folder, is not a place to store things. It's a temporary
How do you
resting
clean out
spot.
your download then?
That's what we're gonna do.
Oh,
It's gonna be so much fun.
Great. Speed up your computer.
How many of you have a super messy desktop on your computer?
Oh, I have a lot of, not a lot of
Okay.
stuff, not individual documents, but a
My
lot of
time is
applications.
slow, it's slow, and I don't use a lot either.
Having
I
lots of
haven't
files
done-
on your
I
desktop,
don't do maintenance.
like having lots of files on a desktop and having to be messy,
No,
is
no.
bad. So don't do that. You want to keep things actually organized in that file structure, because especially on a PC, when your computer is starting up, if you don't have the shortcuts links on your desktop and it's the actual file, your computer has to pull that up and have that ready to go. So it's more processes that have to load in order to get going. So if you have a nice clean desktop, your computer can just kind of start right up, and then whatever you got to interact with will go. That's a good way to think about it. But anyways, to get back to the downloads, we saw that it animated down here. And actually, if I click on this, you can see a little preview of the image. But some people actually don't even have this on their dock, right? So let's say I don't have that shortcut there. So I want to get to my downloads folder. I want to find that picture. Pretty much anytime you're downloading anything from the internet, from Google Chrome, from Safari, from Internet Explorer, Firefox, it should go to your downloads folder unless you've specified somewhere else, like documents. And even then, we can still find it. Sometimes it goes to your desktop, which you shouldn't do either because that gets out of control after a while.
Can this happen on an iPad too, or only desktop?
It does happen on an iPad.
Okay.
Like if you were to look, and this is actually something new that they've added to it, but there's like a My Files
Okay.
thing here. Looks almost, I know it's probably hard to see from out here, but it's very similar to Finder where you have that whole file structure right there. They didn't have that on iPad originally, and you were kind of limited to just whatever applications were on there, but they've come around. So now when you download something, you'll see it's in the iCloud drive or on my iPad. It still looks a little different, but and the reason why they did that is because they didn't want you, downloading a movie and putting it on there. They wanted you to buy it through Apple TV. There's a purpose to a lot of the magnets there. But
The other thing Google Drive will do, if you're sending a picture to Google Drive, after you download it, it'll ask you if you want to locate it. Because you don't necessarily know which file. It might be a temporary file. Maybe you want a special name for the file, whatever it is. They're pretty smart about prompting to take that next step.
And I think sometimes like that can innately we'll just like click out of it, like, oh, stop yelling at me, right? But it's usually trying to do something for a reason. So I've downloaded that. I could click on it down here and it would open it. But let's say that's gone away as well. And I don't have that. I got to find it. So I'm going to go to Finder or like my Start menu, and it's going to pull that up where I left off. I still don't see it, right? I'm in Applications. I got Desktop here. So, okay, I don't want any of those. I'm going to click on Finder again. It's going to open up just a generic window, whatever I have it set to, which is Recents. But if I go to Downloads, in the file structure, there's the picture. So now I have a couple ways that I could move it.
What if you didn't go to Finder, but just went to your pictures or your gallery? Would it have fed into there yet?
Usually not.
Okay.
Not unless I've opened it.
Okay.
Sometimes it will go to Documents, but it should default to Downloads. And if it hasn't, you could also search for it. If there was a file name, but I'm a kind of a visual person in how I interact with stuff, and so from like an organizational standpoint, I like to see where things are moving to. So one example, I could right click on it and I get some options. I could share it, which could add it to email, but to me that's like too much going on. I want to actually see where this is going. So I'm going to go up top to Finder and create a new Finder window. So I have another open screen here that I can move aside. I can actually interact with these and set them up like visually. I'm going to go to Documents over here, and I'm going to create a folder and just say Pictures. So just an empty folder. I can go back and forth between here. And now I could actually drag and just drop it over. So I've removed
That's
it.
the only place where that is now.
Yep. So I click out of Downloads. It's not in there anymore. We'll see if I go back to Downloads, it's empty. If I go back to Documents where I created that folder, I now have Pictures. And if I click on it, it's in here. If I double clicked on it, you'll actually see that it will open up in Preview. Remember I mentioned Preview as a functional application, but you might not notice that it made that transition. if you have a Mac, a really cool shortcut is to highlight it and hit spacebar, and it gives me like a quick preview, which is cool. So this applies not to just downloading things from your email or whatever. This applies to files that you have on your computer and getting organized. So, an important place to start, I think, is to become aware of where that file structure is on your computer, where the documents folder is, and cleaning it up. And in the process of doing that, you're getting more familiar with moving things and getting control now over your system and where it's going. And having a nice, clean downloads folder it's a good thing. And it's a good feeling. You should be proud if you get to that point. Because now when you download a file, you don't have to search through 50 different items to find it. You just know, okay, it's going to be right there when I go to downloads. And then I can move it, take it out, delete it when I don't need it anymore. You don't have to do it every day, but, being on top of it.
I have 670 items in my download.
I had somebody in here the last time we did this class, and I think there was 2,000 items on the desktop.
There were what?
2,000 items on the desktop. And we're talking about items stacked on top of one
And
another.
the computer was still working?
Yeah.
Well, that's when you hope things crash. And
Just
you
start
buy a new
over.
computer and start
What's done
fresh.
is done.
Yeah.
I like to
You
have
said,
a
"Yay, give it
hierarchical
another-
structure of file folders.
It's a beautiful thing if you
And
can do
I think that's important to start with right away.
that. Yes.
Because then when you start saving stuff, you can put them where you want them to go.
Then you start to save space because you get rid of stuff you don't need.
Yeah.
You're aware of where things are on your computer. So when you're searching for things, you're also going to start to learn about different file types and sizes. So like when I go to documents and I go into my pictures, I can actually get info and it will tell me it's 2.9 megabytes in size. So if those were all videos, it might say 10 gigabytes or whatever.
Well, just in my pictures, I've got hikes, I've got birds and animals, I've got family and on the family, I've got all the different grandchildren's names and the pictures going. It just works for me.
Yeah, and then an important thing about that we'll talk about in the next class is taking that and backing it up somewhere safe, where if you don't necessarily have the iCloud storage and you can use like an external hard drive to put that somewhere so you always have a second copy. Because if you didn't have it on iCloud, your computer crashed, it would be gone, which is devastating.
And next time we're together, if you could talk about backing things up and what that means,
Yeah.
that would be helpful. But everything on the bottom bar right there now, those are all apps, right?
Yes.
Okay, now do they ever just appear without you ever,
Yes.
and then you have to figure out what it is and
On-
what's it gonna
on-
do for you?
On newer Macs,
Yeah.
this section right here,
Yeah,
you can see there's little lines changing it. This is like recent applications.
like, hey.
Yeah, you've used this in the last week, so it's going to be right here, and then they'll cycle out.
Okay.
So like Zoom would be here.
But I mean, if it's something you haven't signed up for, do they show up?
If you bought a brand new computer,
Yeah.
they'll have stuff preloaded.
Yeah, like on this it had a whole bunch of stuff on it.
Yeah.
And I'd go through
Androids
it.
are really bad with that. We call it bloat because it's bloating your system with stuff you don't need.
Right.
Some of it you can actually remove. Sometimes you can't. And just tuck it in a folder or something. Yeah, it's frustrating. Every company does that. Apple loads it with news and TV and stuff like that. So that's kind of the dry run of downloading the file types. And we're at that 7:30 mark. This is kind of the class here. I have a few things to wrap up. But if you want to stick around after too and ask some questions or talk a little more in depth, we're welcome to do that too. And I'm just going to go back here. So we had talked about USB cords. You don't need to memorize this. I just want to touch on it real quick. That you'll see some that you probably interact with a lot, which is going to be this one here, USB Type A. This one you'll see a lot now, which is your Type C.
And are these all available like at Walmart and Amazon now?
Everywhere. And you'll get them free. You'll have a whole tote full of them.
Right, yeah.
And it's important sometimes to hang on to them. You know, sometimes I pull out an old hard drive with stuff on it, and it only uses like this type here, but I don't have, you know, I want to have that cable. You don't have to keep every single one, but I think it's good to hold on to some. And again, you don't have to memorize. USB Type-C, I think, is important to know. It's the one that we're all kind of interacting with now.
But that can be recharging or transferring in.
Multiple
Okay.
things, yeah. Video signal, audio, and if you were to go in and look, you'd actually see like all of these different little connections or all of those things. Similar to like, you know, with audio, you know, you'd have stereo left and right, and the microphone. It's the same idea.
Back in the olden days.
And this one, like Type B, you'd see like in your printer. So if you're having trouble connecting your printer, sometimes actually having this cable to connect that through will give you the hardwire connection. Then you could set up like Wi-Fi. So in terms of like troubleshooting, it's kind of important to have like a few basic things. I know we've like thrown a lot out there, but there's a nice easy way to kind of start when you run into some trouble. And number one is going to be Google. Google it.
Right.
If you have a question, you'll be amazed. You could say MacBook Pro won't connect to Canon printer. And you'll find a YouTube video somebody had made about it, and they'll walk you through it. So
And are they all reliable, or do you have to look at things skeptically and it's
yeah,
not opening a can of worms?
sometimes a couple different sources. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no control over it, so it could be
Yeah.
anything. But you'll be amazed at what you'll find. I mean, that applies to everything, right? Like your car, you know, the plumbing in your house. You just YouTube it or Google it. So, and I do that like in the tech workshops. Somebody will be like, "How do I get my computer to talk back to me?"
Computer.
I don't know, just Google it. We'll find out, and we jump in. But going to some of that basic terminology of understanding, like the USB connection. Sometimes USB cables go bad. Sometimes it's your computer. Sometimes is the software up to date? Is it maybe not compatible with a really old operating system? That will be how you kind of get started with some of it. And then walking through the process, you know, a few times. Like, did I connect this device this way? Is there power to it? Have I turned my computer off in a while? You know, like.
Do they need to be totally shut down once in a while?
Yes, and Apple will even tell you you don't have to do it. It drives me nuts. Like, computers will do really crazy things if they stay on for a really long time. It's just like us being tired. Like, you'll just do something and it won't make any sense. And
But
computers,
same with phones and iPads too?
yeah, you'll probably notice
Your electric bill too.
Yeah.
your
I just
phone will
reduced
just
my
shut down
electric bill.
sometimes on its own because it's just like, whoa, it's been running too much. And we've gotten so used to these things just being on all the time. You know, and some other important factors in terms of the batteries, like if you have a laptop, don't leave it plugged in all the time if it doesn't need to be. Like, it's called cycling your battery, where you actually run it from 100 to 0 and charge it back up. It kind of calibrates it. Same thing with cell phones. Don't leave them on the charger all the time.
Overnight all the time, or days and days?
Yeah, you can do it.
Charged. If
Yeah.
they're charged up, there's really no reason.
Yeah, it's actually unhealthy for the battery, and you'll wear out your battery a lot faster.
So you don't automatically put it on the charger at night?
You know what I do? Like, I'll. It depends on where it is. Like, if it's at 60%, I'll wait till the morning to do it. But you know, if I'm in that routine at night, and I get up at 3 to go to the bathroom, come back to bed, it's probably charged. So just unplug it. You know, or you know, if it's downstairs, and where you might leave it at the kitchen table overnight.
Can I just ask a question about EMFs?
Mm.
Do you have any concern about those at all?
About what?
About what?
About
The
yeah.
electromagnetic
Oh,
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theories. I think we're finally at that point where we would start to see stuff like in terms of having cell phones in our pockets all the time. Like, because they've been around for a while now, I think you would start to notice it. You know, would I live next to a 5G tower?
Right.
Probably not.
Okay.
I wouldn't let them mount it outside of my apartment building, but no. I mean, people have been around radio wave signals forever, and a lot of the technology, Wi-Fi, is done in a very similar fashion. So, but I think one concern is lithium batteries. They are dangerous, and like I have a drone I use to take videos and stuff, and I put it in fire-safe bags when I fly, and I can't check it because it's not pressurized down there. So, like, having these things on chargers all the time is just generally like a bad practice. Like you'll notice your computer, if it's a lot older, it probably has to be plugged in all the time. That's because the battery's shot. But for brand new stuff, like it's good to have that healthy practice.
And how hot should they ever feel, you know, if you're charging something?
I mean, it shouldn't be burning you, but they'll be warm.
They can really.
Even the Google Chromecast we talked about, when that's plugged in, that thing is warm, like for pretty much the entire time. But yeah, the Samsung had the incident a while back where their phones were blowing up. But I mean, lithium batteries, like if they're damaged and they get exposed to oxygen, can explode. So, and it's just crazy because we have this stuff in everything now. But yeah, so you don't have to shut your computer down every night, but doing it occasionally. Like I'll do it every other day maybe, but you know, I'm running some crazy like video editing processes, so I need my computer to be tip-top shape. But doing it all the time is actually bad for it too. It's, you know,
Doing what all the time?
shutting your computer down like constantly, because it has to just pull up more stuff, and it's more stress on it, you know. It's the same idea like, you know, shutting your car off and turning it on. You know, you want to do it, like, you don't want to leave your car just sitting and the battery will die. It's, you know, kind of a similar mindset for that. So, just to kind of give you a preview, if you want to come to the second class, there'll be lots of things talking about internet connections and speeds. This will affect, you know, your iCloud backup and things like that. Internet safety, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about URLs and upload, download speeds, which will really connect through to sharing files, uploading them, different ways to do that. Some of the stuff we talked about today. And then even external hard drives and backing up your files.
So that's digital basics too?
Yeah. And if you can make that second class, it's really cool for the first group to make it, because you might have had some experiences between now and then you want to talk about from the first class, and we can do that. As I mentioned too, there is the once a month troubleshooting sessions. So next week on Wednesday, 2 to 4, here. If you can drop me an email through the Penobscot Tech at Gmail would be great, so I can sign you up for a time slot. But if you want to just show up, that's fine too. I just won't be able to get to you if I have them booked.
Okay.
Usually I stick around
So if
after
we come
too.
early and we can hang out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You know what the date
Your
is?
name?
Ricky, R-I-C-K-Y. Yep.
You know what the date is next Wednesday?
27.
27th.